It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of July 26, 1996. We have 7 movies to look at today, a lot of notable films, and we got a lot to get to, so let's just go ahead and jump on into it. We'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is A Time to Kill, the second John Grisham, Joel Schumacher film after The Client. So like I mentioned before, this is the second feature film Joel Schumacher did based off of a John Grisham novel. Of course, he did The Client before that, 2 years prior to this. And you figured bring him back to do another one of these movies, and he did a good job with the first movie, The Client, and The Time to Kill is a pretty good film. Is it a great film overall? I won't go that far. I could definitely see when you look at this movie that they're trying to create a new modern day To Kill a Mockingbird, kind of, with Matthew McConaughey in the role of the Gregory Peck performance. Was it Gregory Peck? I've seen this movie 100 times. How do I not know who was in To Kill a Mockingbird? It was Gregory Peck. Like I said, it feels like they're trying to create a modern day version of To Kill a Mockingbird, with Matthew McConaughey's character trying to be the new generation, this generation's Atticus Finch. But this is definitely a much different feel compared to Kill a Mockingbird, which is still a fantastic film after all these years. But this actually was a film that John Grisham did not want to sell the film rights to at first. It took Warner Brothers to give him $6 million to sell the rights off, and he basically got approval for the casting of the film. They actually wanted Woody Harrelson for the leading role in here, and Val Kilmer was also in contention, but they eventually went with Matthew McConaughey. And Matthew McConaughey, man, like, there was a time when people forgot that this guy was actually a pretty good actor, but then again, when you saw in multiple romantic comedies that are lackluster in the 2000s, that's probably a reason why people don't take you that seriously. But luckily his career did turn around, and he's kind of back to where he started at. And Sandra Bullock also got a big payday on this one, too. I think she got $6 million for 5 weeks of work. And but yeah, the performances overall are what carry the film. You got great performances from Bullock and McConaughey. Samuel L. Jackson's great in this movie. He has that great line, "Yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell." Kevin Spacey's very good in here. Oliver Platt. You got Charles Dutton in here. Brendan Fricker. Donald Sutherland. Kiefer Sutherland you see in there. Ashley Judd. There's just a great cast overall here. The story we've seen kind of done over and over again. I don't think the case itself is that compelling. Honestly, it's not strong enough to really carry the flow of the film, but it's what the actors really do with these characters that keeps you invested in how this is going to pan out. I mean, it's a film that it certainly doesn't pales in comparison to something like A Few Good Men, which I think is really the definitive courtroom film of this decade. I can't think of any other ones that come close to that. This one, The Client, maybe, but other than that, I think those two are pretty much about it. But this is still a solid film. It's still a very entertaining film. It works very well because of the performances overall. You do get invested in what happens. The story is very intriguing, and it's based off of one of Grisham's classic stories. I mean, it's a great movie. It's a strong film overall. Could the story have been a little bit better? Probably, to give it kind of a little bit of an edge, but for what it is, there were more positives to this movie than negatives. I'll give it that. And I think it delivered enough there to really recommend it. I think it is a strong film. The story could have been a little bit better, but as it is, it's still a pretty entertaining film. I recommend A Time to Kill. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie. And speaking of Woody Harrelson, he had a movie come out this weekend with Randy Quaid. It was the follow-up for the Farrelly Brothers after what they did with Dumb and Dumber. And that movie is Kingpin. Like I said, Kingpin is the follow-up for Peter and Bobby Farrelly after what they did with Dumb and Dumber, put their name on the map. This film, however, was not the big success that movie was. It only ended up making about $7 million over its budget, which I guess is considered somewhat of a success. You may back your budget, but at the same time, considering how successful Dumb and Dumber was, there was possible. They probably were expecting a whole lot more. But interesting little bit of film trivia in my personal life. They actually shot a little bit of this movie down the road from where I live. When this came out when they filmed this around 95, I think, there used to be a little motel further down the road where they shot the film, and the scene where they shot the motel is where they shot a little bit of the scene in the movie where they're coming out of the hotel room and there's the car right there, and they're talking to the girl in this movie, Vanessa Angel. That was actually filmed down the road from where I live. It used to be like a pool there, but now that motel and that pool is gone now. It's now a shopping complex down there. Um, but I remember going down there when they were filming this movie. I don't. At least we didn't know what. I don't think we really knew what they were filming down there because this was before the internet, so we really didn't. And we just saw cameras, lights down there, and people shooting cameras down there. So we were seeing what was going on, and then lo and behold, it was actually a scene from this movie, which really, when you look at this movie again, it holds up very well. I think this is actually one of the stronger films the Farrelly brothers have done. I think it's a little bit better than Dumb and Dumber, but it's a really good movie. It's a hilarious comedy. Woody Harrelson is very good in here. So is Randy Quaid. Bill Murray in this movie is fan-freaking-tastic. I mean, you could tell he's having the time of his life playing this role in this movie. Vanessa Angel has a good role as the love interest for the Woody Harrelson character, and Randy Quaid has a ton of fun in this movie. This movie is very, very funny. I would say maybe it's a movie that's a little bit ahead of its time. I don't think people really knew what to expect from this movie, despite the fact that these guys had just done Dumb and Dumber, and it's definitely very similar to the style of comedy in Dumb and Dumber, but I don't know. Maybe I don't know why people didn't go see it. Maybe it was because there was just too many good comedies coming out at the time. We had The Nutty Professor, Multiplicity had just come out, so maybe it was just one of those things where it was just in a crowded marketplace. But it's a really damn good movie. If you haven't seen Kingpin and you want to see the best of the Farrelly brothers at their finest, this is definitely one of those films to check out. It's a very underrated film from them, but I highly recommend checking it out if you love the Farrelly brothers' other comedic works. It's definitely worth your time. So definitely check that movie out, Kingpin. What more can I say about it? So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and it's Jackie Chan's second film of 1996, and that is Super Cop. So this is a weird releasing strategy that they had for this movie. This is actually the third installment of a series called Police Story. In fact, Jackie Chan was surprisingly a character that he played in those films, the first and the second one. And this is actually, believe it or not, he actually directed the first two of these films, but this time he didn't direct this film. This is actually the one that came before. Basically, we got this in America before Police Story and Police Story 2 came to America. As far as I remember, I know that there was a limited theatrical release in 2019, but I think these were out on DVD and VHS long before then. But I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to dig into more information on this, but I think this was the first one to come out here in the U.S., if I'm not mistaken, but don't quote me on that. I have not seen this movie. I've never seen this one before. This is a version that has the dubbing of both Jackie Chan and Michelle Yeoh in this film. There's a new score they added to this. There's a rendition of Kung Fu Fighting played with Tom Jones playing in the credits. There's a song specifically written for the film by Devo. This cut in particular cuts 10 minutes out of the movie, so it's nearly about an hour and a half long. And like I said before, I really don't know. I've never seen any of these Police Story movies. I'd never seen Super Cop before. I had seen Rumble in the Bronx. Rumble in the Bronx, I think I really enjoyed. I'd say I really enjoyed. I reviewed that one a couple months ago, in 1996, with a couple episodes ago, I should say. But here, this one, I don't really know too much about. I know this was one of those movies that came out when they were trying to push Jackie Chan as the next big superstar, and it did kind of work. Rumble in the Bronx, this wasn't as big of a hit as Rumble in the Bronx, but it did get people to notice the guy, and of course that eventually followed into what would eventually come from him the next couple of years. But like I said, I haven't seen this movie, so I don't really know too much about it, but I mean, it looks like it's the same kind of fun that was in Rumble in the Bronx, honestly, but I can't really say for sure. So that is Super Cop or Police Story 3, whichever way you want to look at it. Let's go ahead and take a look at our next movie, and that is The Adventures of Pinocchio. Well, I'll give it this much. It was certainly more intriguing and more entertaining than the recent Pinocchio films we've gotten. Except, of course, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which is a great film. But I'm talking more about Disney's live-action remake of Pinocchio, the Pauly Shore Pinocchio, that terrible Roberto Benigni Pinocchio from 2002. I mean, at least this movie was at least trying. I mean, you basically get the story of Pinocchio that's been told time and time again, except this time in a live-action format. It's directed by the guy that did the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. The overall result is a noble, ambitious adaptation that doesn't really come together as well as I think they wanted it to. I mean, the casting of Martin Landau is actually pretty good. I think he does a pretty good job at here carrying a lot of the weight of the movie. Jonathan Taylor Thomas, I think, is perfectly fine in here. He does best with the material that's given to him, but they do work off each other very well. You can believe the scenes that they're in. Some of the visual effects are definitely nicely done. There are some, though, that are really, really dated. I mean, just watch the scenes with not Jiminy Cricket. It's not Jiminy Cricket. It's actually the cricket. The cricket in this is named Pepe. Except that if you notice in there, Don Rickles is doing the voice, I think, for him in that there. But in the actual movie, it's done by David Doyle, who you may know as the voice of Grandpa on the original seasons of Rugrats. He was also in Charlie's Angels. Which, yeah, but either way you look at it, those effects really do not hold up well. The donkey transformation scene, it's a fun idea, but those effects really don't hold up that well. Pinocchio overall doesn't look too bad either. Doesn't look too bad. I mean, he looks like he's a nicely done visual effect. The effects are done by Jim Henson's Creature Shop, and I get the sense that maybe if Jim Henson was still alive while this was being made, we probably would have had a better movie. Like I said, the overall story is kind of what you expect. You get a lot of the stories in his life you'd expect. His school experience, being sold off to a puppeteer, going to Pleasure Island, or in this case, it's called Terra Magica. That's all expected stuff. There are some changes to the story, stuff with the Magica sequences. The Monster World scene is replaced as the climax for more stuff at this place. The story is just okay. Nothing about it really impresses, and again, the visuals really don't hold up well as some of the other ones do. There are some that still hold up, but other ones, not so much. That's probably the best way to describe this movie. A movie that's trying its best to do something on par with the Disney classic, but it just can't come across anything as as just a mediocre film. It's not terrible, it's not god-awful, but it isn't that impressive either. It's just kind of the run-of-the-mill. There certainly is possibility for a better movie that could have been made with this concept, but honestly, compare this to some of the other live-action adaptations we've gotten. It certainly beats the crap out of that terrible Roberto Benigni movie from 2002, and the Disney version, the Disney live action one by Robert Zemeckis we got recently. I mean, especially, and even the Pauly Shore animated one. I mean, I'll gladly take this over any of those versions. But honestly, if you're looking for the best version of the story for a modern generation, I keep saying it, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. I mean, it was one of the best movies from last year. Won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature. I mean, what more can you say about that one? This, I think, is just okay. It definitely could have been a whole lot better, but it certainly could have been a whole lot worse. It's just kind of a mediocre film. I saw it once. I'm kind of glad I saw it, but honestly, I really have no intention on going back to seeing it again. So, that is The Adventures of Pinocchio. Let's go ahead and take a look at our next movie, and that is Joe's Apartment. I mean, for MTV, I mean, that's pretty much kind of what you expect. I mean, they really went in on the fact that this was MTV's first feature film, and this is actually one of two movies MTV did with Geffen Pictures in 1996. The other one is the far superior film in Beavis and Butthead Do America, but we'll eventually get to that one once we get to Christmas time. This is based off of a short that you used to see on MTV during the commercial breaks. If you had the I Want My MTV videotape, that's actually on that tape, and for what it is, it's fine for what it is. It's definitely a very fun short. Taking it as a movie, though, it's complicated. I will say this, though. It's notable for a couple of reasons. One, it's the first movie by MTV, of course. They've made movies since then. Two, this is actually the first film that Blue Sky Studios was attached to. They worked on the animation for this. They did the animated commercials before this. They did the sequences for the cockroaches. They actually blended scenes with puppetry, real cockroaches, and stop-motion animation to make some of these scenes. It made 20th Century Fox look at this and say, we want to acquire you guys, and eventually turn that into a feature animation company, which we saw what happened with that. They created the Ice Age movies. They made the Peanuts movie, made a whole bunch of other movies, and now they're no longer there because they've been absorbed into Disney. But this was the first film that they got their attention for. Most people really didn't like this movie when it came out. For me, it's one of those nostalgic guilty pleasures for me. I will say that as a film, it doesn't work all the way through. It's not a very strong movie overall, and they do a little too much to get this to a feature-length script-wise, but I mean, it's Joe's Apartment. You pretty much get what you get if you've seen the shorts. You do get some very abundant... The laughs you get are definitely abundant depending on how you love the short. I thought that worked well enough. I thought they maybe took it a little too much to try to get this to a feature length film, but like I said, I've seen a lot worse. It's perfectly fine for what it is. Is it necessary? No, but it's still fun. It's still fun if you watch this short, if you watch this back when this movie came out, which I did, and I think it works very well on its own on those levels. I think it is a guilty pleasure film. It's not a great film per se, but if you grew up with the short, if you grew up with MTV back then and what they did for comedy like this, you definitely get a good kick out of this movie. I enjoy this film a lot. It's a guilty pleasure film for me. I thought it was a fun ride. Joe's Apartment, let's go ahead and take a look at the next movie, and that is Stonewall. This is actually one of two films that was made about the Stonewall riots, which this movie is about. Of course, the events that took place in 1969, a big moment for the modern American gay rights movement. And this film is basically a fictional account of the weeks leading up to that event, inspired by the memoirs of the guy that wrote the story for this, Martin Duberman. The notable name in here you'll see is Guillermo Diaz, who was more prominently known in films like Half-Baked. He's been in a bunch of other movies since then. And the film is shot in a unique way. It's directed in this documentary style with interview footage spliced into the film. There was also lip sync numbers put in there by the actors involved in here. As far as the film goes, I really don't know too much about it. I don't really know too much about these riots in particular. I haven't seen the other movie they did with this, the 2015 one. So I don't really know too much about the story or if this movie's any good or not. I see it's got some pretty decent reviews there, so it could be something interesting to see. It could be something intriguing, but I don't really know too much about this to really delve into it a little bit more, but it looks like it could be something that could be interesting. It's something that looks like it could be intriguing, but like I said, I don't know too much about it, so that's pretty much all I got to say about that one. That's Stonewall. Let's go ahead and take a look at the last movie that we have here, and that is Manny and Lo. So the story is that you have two sisters. One is played by a young Scarlett Johansson, one of her early film roles. The other is played by Alexa Palladino. They run away from several foster homes, sleeping wherever they can, including model homes. But when Lo becomes pregnant at 16, the two find that they can't make it through a crisis on their own. With nowhere else to turn, they try to kidnap this woman, but it's from a baby supply store, and she just may need Manny and Lo as much as they need her. So, that's really all I know about this one. This is another one I haven't seen before, but this is one of Scarlett Johansson's early film roles, as I said. Got some pretty mediocre reviews online from what I see from it. It might be one of those films that might be good, but it could also be one of those kind of Oscar baiters type of films, a film that's just trying to pull these cliches out to make something intriguing, but I don't know. I haven't seen the film. It's got Scarlett Johansson in an early film role, so maybe it's got a potential to be good, but it's not something I really want to rush out to see. So, another quick one on that one to wrap this one up. That's Manny and Lo. So, with that said, that wraps up another edition of Time About the Movies. We'll jump into August on the next episode with 5 movies, including Matilda from director Danny DeVito, and also starring him. Chain Reaction with Morgan Freeman and Keanu Reeves. Fat Beach, Gwyneth Paltrow and Emma, and also Cyclo. So 5 movies to look at next time around. We'll delve into those on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time, and until then, as always, take care.